That's where we are, and we welcome you to be here, for being here, and we always welcome Geoffrey, who's a year younger than I am, actually.
I am.
And so we're going to go to the old home together.
I had a crush on her in high school, but she didn't even know who the hell I was.
No, that was Sharon.
Oh no, she knew who I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what goes around comes around. But anyway, Geoffrey does excellent work, and he's always faithful to come and spend the day with us. So, all you crowd who think you know something about Beaufort, you don't know nothing. Is that right? Is that right? All right, let's go.
Is that being attached to one?
It is attached to the light. You can't have everything.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
If you either get a puff of air or a little light.
She wants no light.
Yeah, I'd prefer no light. Yeah. Although that fan does feel good, God knows. Yeah.
All right. What's the boat? Wind or light?
Maybe we could maybe just turn it on every 10 minutes.
I've done everything to take that cord out of it. I can't make it work. It's an electrical problem.
No, I mean just run it for a second. Every once in a while, you tell me Nikki off.
Yeah,
Just before you pass out, holler.
Yeah,
when
you're taking a drink.
Yeah, some of the pictures are not that, I mean, we don't have to have them. Okay. This is a little bit different than what I normally do. What I normally do is talk about stuff that happened in Beaufort in the 1800s or the early 1900s or what have you. But Karen wanted me to do my memories of Beaufort when I was a child growing up there, which would have been from 1955 until I left and go to college in 1974. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I've tried to keep myself out of this presentation. I don't like to talk about myself, so I'm going to pretend like I'm like a ghost or something that, and I'm going to tell you what Beaufort was like, but these are literally my memories. For instance, that skiff right there was my friend Alan Woodard's skiff. He would let me borrow it every now and then. He didn't let me borrow it that day because it's got a motor on it. He wouldn't let me borrow the motor, but I could row it. And those two people, you can't really see them because the picture is too small. But one is Alan, who unfortunately has passed away. But the other little tiny girl there with the same kind of haircut is Mary Ellen sitting right here. Yeah. That was on the Gulf Dock in Beaufort, which was owned by Sonny Gear's crowd in Morehead City. But Webster Willis and his son, Johnny Willis, ran the filling station and the fuel dock. And that's an old shad boat parked back of it. Okay. Swipe to your left, please. Adairs go back to 1820 at least in Beaufort. William J. Adair was the first person to show up on the Carteret County Census in 1820, but he had been there for a little while before then. And he lived on Orange Street, and then every single male Adair since then has lived on Orange Street. I'm actually the 6th generation of Adairs to live on Orange Street. Those two gentlemen there, the one on the left is Teese Rice. His name was Leon, but everybody for some reason called him Teese. He was my grandfather's first cousin, so that would have been on my grandmother's side. The fellow on the right, that young 24-year-old there, is my grandfather. That's William Edward Adair Sr. They joined together in 1908 and formed a funeral home called Adair Rice Funeral Home. And it was the first funeral home in Beaufort. In those days, there were no funeral homes. There would be somebody who would be like an undertaker that would, embalm the body sometimes and sometimes not. There weren't any laws about it. But the funerals would either be held at the deceased's house or in the church somewhere. But this was actually a funeral home so that the funeral could be conducted completely by Adair Rice, and the family wouldn't have to worry about it. It wouldn't have to have the layout there in the house and the living room, and wouldn't have to do a church. So that was the purpose of that. And it went over big. It turned out that Granddaddy kept that open until my uncle closed it down, and I think in the 1990s finally.
He looks like Gregory Peck a little bit on the right.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason why I like To Kill a Mockingbird. My granddaddy, when he was young, did look like Atticus Finch. Yeah. Okay. Switch. It is right there. You're looking at it. It's on 125 Craven Street. Next door was where my grandparents lived. It was 121 Craven Street. I was born in the hospital over here in Morehead City like everybody else my age. But when I came home to the apartment upstairs over that funeral home right there. And so that's where I lived my first 8 years, was in the apartment upstairs. Janet, who is now the hostess out at Blackbeard's, was my babysitter. And she used to have, her job was to keep me quiet when they were having funerals downstairs. But Janet would always say, I can remember to this day, she would look at me and she'd say, can't make any noise because there's sad people downstairs. So, which was probably true. But so anyhow, that's where I spent the first few years of my life.
Oops.
Now, when that happens, it's telling you all kinds of information you don't. It is, absolutely. That's me in 1961, I think, standing on the front steps of what is now Craving Art. That is exactly right.
And Heather is in Spain now.
Oh, I'll be darned. Okay.
Arts retreat for a month.
Switch, please. Yeah, just
about 6 or 7 years old.
6 or 7, something like that. I was born in 55, so yeah, that would have been 61, 6. Yeah, that's right. Now, that's what Beaufort looked like. Beaufort didn't change very much in those days, or I should say didn't change very quickly. Beaufort was kind of a gritty place. It was, there was, everything downtown was, was work-a-day, blue-collar functional. You can see that this was probably taken in the fall of the year, sometime between October and Christmas, because the vast majority of the Menhaden fleet is docked up there on Front Street. But Front Street didn't have any tourist things. It didn't have any, it was just a place where boats docked and were fueled, or they unloaded. There were other kind of stores there, but they were not geared toward tourists. They were geared toward the people in Beaufort. And so anyhow, that's the way the place looked. I think that picture was probably taken in the late 1930s or early 1940s, but it looked exactly like that when I was born, and actually for some time thereafter. It didn't change very much at all.
Those two beautiful houses that they tore down right there in the corner.
Yes.
They're still in there. They're in that picture.
Yeah, that's right. They were, when I moved there in 63, one of them, the closer one to you, and I can't remember the name of it, but that had been either demolished or moved. But the one,
You have a pointer?
I don't.
No?
Yep, I don't. I used to. I don't know what happened to it. Cat got it, I think. Yeah. Okay.
This is why I think you have a VHA.
Well, now let
No,
you.
it is. I think these right here.
That's now. Let me tell you about that one. That house there was built before the Civil War and used to be attached to a hotel that was there that was variously called the Ocean View Hotel, and there was another couple of names it had. But as owners would buy it and sell it, the name would change. But that was part of a hotel, and that hotel, I don't have a photograph of it, but I do have a Currier and Ives lithograph of it. And the reason why it's important was because during the bombardment of Fort Macon in April of 1862, Currier and Ives sent a reporter down here, and he did a lithograph of people standing on that hotel watching the bombardment. So I've got that. The hotel later on burned, but not the house part of it. The house actually was attached. The porch wrapped around and was attached, and there were catwalks that went across Front Street to another building on the other side, which was a dance hall. But all that burned. So that was one of those two houses. The other one was just a residence, and Mary Ellen's right, it was a beautiful residence. But you got to understand, my friend Julian Arrington told me one time, says, Jeff, when we were kids, you could have bought any of these old houses on Front Street for $20,000, any of them. And the reason why is you could not heat them. There wasn't enough oil in Arabia to heat the damn things. You couldn't cool them. Of course, that wasn't a big issue because there wasn't air conditioning in Beaufort when I was a kid anyhow. You couldn't cool them. You had to have a full-time staff to maintain the rot in them. And so, nobody wanted them. They were dinosaurs. And so it's only been recently that people have been thankfully too, have been grabbing them up and restoring them. And a lot of them didn't make the cut. And the ones that Mary Ellen's pointing to are two that did not make the cut. Yes.
What, that hotel,
a parking lot for Beaufort Linen.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Okay, Bridget.
But we had a 3-story department store.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Now that's what Taylor's Creek looked like when I was a kid. I mean, it was just an empty, there were some pleasure sailboats there, but that was a typical workboat parked on a permanent mooring there. In fact, that Vance Fulford owned that boat there, so, yep. Okay, switch. My father had a Esso station downtown, and he also had, he later moved it out at Live Oak Street and expanded it. But and when he bought that, it was an Esso station, but in back of it was a fuel dock. No, that is there's. You remember where the fudge shop used to be?
Yes.
That's right there where that location. Yeah, that's right.
So what happened to the SO sign? ESSO?
It-
Did we steal that sign?
No, when it changed to Exxon, I'm sure the company came and got the sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
They,
us teenagers were known to borrow a sign.
Yep. And there was one there that said Esso. I might even have a picture of it here. Now that building to the left of it was Claude Wheatley's Law. That building's still there. That's oddly enough, when we had urban renewal, there was only one building that was left standing there, and that was Claude Wheatley's. I don't know how that happened. So okay, switch. Now that's the same corner, and that is looking at Finn's now. It's three photographs of from the same place, which was upstairs in the Lippman building. 3 photographs, but at different times. The top one is the oldest one, and the next one down is the next oldest, and the third one down is the newest.
What was the Lippman building?
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the Lippman building was Beaufort's largest building, and we got pictures of that.
The first picture.
Yep, that was in the first picture.
Yeah, I saw it, but I didn't know what it was.
It was a department store with an elevator.
Woo.
Yes,
We were big time.
it was big time. That's right.
Was that small building for police station?
It was indeed. That's what I was going to tell you. There's 2 buildings there I want you to look at. There's a small building in the bottom one is the best photo of it, but it's concrete block building, and that was the police station. And it was the police station for a long time until after I went off to college in '74, still the police station. It was kind of interesting because if you were interviewing a suspect or a defendant, one of you had to stand outside and the other could stand inside. And there was enough room for a telephone. So anyhow, but that's the way that intersection looked when I was a kid, all through high school. Okay, switch.
Jeff.
Yes.
My uncle Floyd Johnson's taxi stand.
That was the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, but I got a better picture of it. Okay, switch. There's the old Colonial store. It's across the street, and you can see a lot of things in there. Actually, where the Crew Bar is now was Math Owens' grocery store. That little smaller building along and to the closer to us is the phone exchange. That was where the phone company was. You can see the old Beaufort water tower. That was the original first Beaufort water tower in the background. Colonial store, of course, is now the same building that used to hold a drugstore, but now it's got Beaufort Linen in it. And you can see the police station right there too in front. Now you can see a cable running right diagonally across the lower left. Yeah. Well, I took this picture when I was a little kid with my mother's Brownie Instamatic camera, and I was standing on top of the wheelhouse of a shad boat that was parked. So yeah, that's actually a mast stay. Okay, switch please. That's also the way Front Street looked. Now, a lot of people who come here think that there wasn't anything on the south side of Front Street, that there was a boardwalk there. That is not true. There were buildings. Southeast. Southeast, that's right. Again, this photograph, everybody loved to take pictures from on top of the Lippman building, and this is one also. That's right. And so you can see down east, down towards the other side of Front Street there, but those were all actually more historic buildings than the ones on the left side. The reason why is because the ones on the left side burned up in fires, so they were relatively new. And they had been rebuilt, but they were newer. The ones on the south side were actually brick and mortar, very nice buildings. that got demolished during urban renewal.
Is CD Grocery in that picture?
Is what now?
CD Grocery.
C.D. Jones Grocery. Yes, you see Jones right there in front? That's C.D. Jones Grocery. Right beside it was, yep. Right beside it on the left side of it was City Grocery was right beside it on the left. That was Ike Moore owned that. Yep. What are they now? Rubble. They're rubble. Yeah, they tore them down during urban renewal. Yeah. And so now, yeah, there's a parking lot under most, or I should say where they are now is a parking lot, but part of the way down would be where the dock house is. And then there's another parking lot beyond the dock house.
Just trying to get a sense of where I am
Yeah.
since I moved here.
Yeah. All right.
Lemons department store was on the corner.
Right.
Turner. So that gives you an idea.
Right. You're standing right on Turner Street. Yep. Now again, you look at this and you say, well, God, that was back in the 1800s or something, but it wasn't. I remember that. Steve remembers that. Karen remembers that. That's the way it looked. Now you see it right dead center. There was a bank building. That was the old Bank of Beaufort. But when I was a kid, it was Jim Rumley's feed store. The reason why was because the Bank of Beaufort failed in the Depression in 1934 and was never reopened as a bank. Okay, switch please. Okay, now that is Mary Ellen's house is dead center just to the right of the crease. And those are the shad boats. Now I've got all of these.
Right next to the number 8.
Yep, that's right. And I've got all those things numbered. And the reason why is because I posted something on Facebook where I identified each of those things by number.
And I love your Facebook posts. They're wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that's a better picture of those two items.
It sure is. Yep. Number 9 and 10 are the two houses that we've been talking about. Both of them are gone now, but they were old houses. And like I say, the one on the right was part of the hotel that was kind of famous. So, okay, switch please. Lippman Building. Go. See, we had things. You could not buy a T-shirt on Beaufort's Front Street in those days. Except the ones that came 3 in a pack and were white. Okay, that was the only kind of T-shirt you could buy. There was no trinket stores in Beaufort. Okay, we didn't have a trinket festival every weekend. It was just a working class. And Lippman's department store was a department store on the ground floor, and it was offices on the top 2 floors. Eastman Furniture was there in the back for a while. Now it's in Morehead City. E.W. Dowling's was, again, a clothing store where you would go and buy your school clothes. And your shoes, that's right. Young's was a women's shop. And that's Young's, those 2 ladies on the right there at the bottom.
And you identify those 2 women.
Beyond my time, ma'am, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I know that was probably in the 60s. Early 60s or late 50s. Yeah.
What's a down now?
What? Life is good, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Right. The translation of that would be trinket shop. Right. Okay. All right. And we had. You're going to laugh at this. You're going to laugh at all you newcomers. We had 5 grocery stores on Front Street alone, in 2 blocks of Front Street, 5 grocery stores, and 4 gas stations. Yep. Huh? They served the boats. That's right. But they also, that's where everybody did their grocery shopping. That's right. The one on the left, ma'am, at the end over here, I declare I know you. Tell me what your name is.
I'm Neva Dale Bridges.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Beaufort.
Good. Right. Okay. I'm with you.
Somerset Square.
If you look at the upper left-hand corner, that is Ike Moore's City Grocery. That man with the googly eyes in the lower left is Leslie Moore, his son. Okay? And the little kid in the black standing in front of googly eyes is Leslie Moore Jr., who lives in Washington, D.C. now. Those kids over there are in front of C.D. Jones grocery store. I don't know who they are, but they were like delivery boys and worked in the store. Then there was the A&P store. Now, the A&P store was at the corner of Queen Street and Front Street on the north side. And later it moved to where Claude Wheatley's office is now over on Cedar Street. Okay, then there was the Colonial store. I've already shown you that picture, the one I took from the top of the boat. And then Ramsey's Grocery, which was a wholesale grocery store. And we used to buy stuff there when I was in high school. So, I mean, it hadn't been that long ago.
Later on Broad Street.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happened to it. Yeah, Clyde Owens was there, and Math Owens' grocery store. They were cousins, by the way. They had grocery stores.
There, we're both at Cedar Street.
Mhm.
The restaurant on Queen Street, that was a little community, grocery store.
That was Clyde Owens' store there, but he also had one for years up on Cedar Street.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And lived there.
Yep. We had two drug stores and a hardware store on Front Street. The hardware store is now where the steakhouse is. What's the name of it? Ribeyes. Yeah. Bell's and Guthrie Jones were over. Well, they were also on Front Street, diagonally across the intersection of Craven and Front. Okay, switch, please.
Want to identify one of the speakers?
I know a couple of them. Maybe Toad Clawson and yep.
Go back.
There's Roses, which had wooden floors that creaked, and you had a smell that just always permeated your whole being when you walked in there. It was popcorn and candy and
Rose oil,
every
Saturday night.
Right.
We locked doors.
Parakeets, they sold parakeets.
Yep.
When did that burn? When did Roses burn? Sometimes it did.
Well, you're right, but they built it back. It burned in the '58 fire.
Okay.
It got damaged badly, but they built it back.
And it became Fishtown Alley.
It became, yes, Fishtown Alley.
Fishtown Alley.
Right, yep.
And then
And now it's
Clausen.
part of Clawson.
And now it's part of Clawson's, that's right. Well, Clawson's named it Tobacco Roses.
Two back up.
That's right. And the reason why is because he had a sound stage in the back, and that's what they called it. He said, "Where's the sound stage? To Tobacco Roses," because that was. You see how that works? Yep. All right, switch, please. And there was actually a couple of businesses on Craven Street too. There was a newspaper called the Beaufort News, which later became the Carteret County News Times, in that house to the left. And there was a radio shop, and there was a Western Union Telegraph, and I don't remember all the other stuff there. That gentleman leaning so jauntily against the parking meter was my father. Yeah, he's talking crap, I'm sure. Okay, switch, please. And kids from the high school worked in these stores. That was a clothing store named Jim Wheatley's. Jim Wheatley owned it, and he had a very, that was where you got your men's clothing if you really wanted to impress.
And I remember when you had your photographs in the window of that store.
That was how somebody should have slapped me then. That's how all that started, yeah, for all those years ago.
Those photographs in the Wheatley store.
Yeah, I know it.
Do you know who those
No, I
That's Jackie Duncan, and that's Gilda Marty.
okay, there you go. Somebody here went to school with him.
Jackie Duncan.
Isn't he a real estate guy now or something?
That's his dad, that's John Duncan.
Okay, right. Okay, good. All right. Switch, please. That's Stampers. Mhm. Who can tell me Stamper's first name? Snooks. That's right. Snooks Stamper. And he acted like it. All right. Yeah. All right. Switch, please. And Beaufort was expanding. That is the precursor of Lowe's. It was Huntley's. Now let me tell you about Mr. Huntley, though. Mr. Hunt, it's where Ace, it's no longer Ace, but it's where Ace was, right. Mr. Huntley loaned out money to people who needed money that the bank wouldn't loan them money for to build houses with. And that's how probably every house that was built after 1945 in Beaufort has Huntley's stuff in it. Flooring, wallboard, whatever else. I mean, he would...
That was Vivian Huntley's connection. And that's
Vivian Huntley, wasn't Vivian George Huntley's wife?
Yes.
All right. Mhm.
And then Jean Huntley's their daughter.
That's right, Jeannie, I called her because she, yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, switch please. And my friend Steve here on my right says that that's the only known photograph of Dogtown. Isn't that Dogtown? I didn't even know about Dogtown until Steve told me about it. They had Saturday night rumbles between the people from the guys from Dogtown and the guys from Turkey Lane. That's my.
So where is it exactly?
It's a nickname.
Right. That is a development that
Still do.
yeah that everybody. I mean, that is the development along. It's blocked out because of something that happened to the negative, but on the left would be Taylor's Creek.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's Front Street winding down. There's a curve, and then a straight section, then a curve the opposite. And then on the back is the genesis of Ann Street. It's not really, I mean, it is, but it was Ann Street extended is what we call it.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Now, I guess, but the reason why I know why they call it Turkey Lane. I don't know this for a fact, but I know what my father told me. It was because there was a lady there that had a bunch of turkeys, and every time you'd walk by there and make a noise, the turkeys like that. And so, right. Yeah. Pardon? It's Fulford Street.
No, 1500 blocks.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Right. I don't know for sure.
And we used to have a right of way from Ann Street down to the creek
Yep.
before people just.
They passed the law.
All right. Switch. Now, that's the old Beaufort Bridge. And y'all are saying, not all of you, but some of you saying, oh, you mean the Graydon Paul Bridge? No, this is the bridge before the Graydon. That's right. Okay. The old, but it is the first automobile bridge. It was before that. There was no bridge between. There was a train bridge, and that was it. But that is the old Beaufort Bridge. It was decommissioned in 1952, 2 years after I was born. But 1927 was finished in 1927. Before. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It's hard to imagine, but stand on Ann Street sometime now, right there in front of any of the Lee Craft houses or what have you, and look back and forth and close your eyes and tell yourself, this was Highway 70. But it was. But
When was it decommissioned?
decommissioned in 57.
57.
That's right. And that's when they finished the new what later became the Graydon Paul Bridge. That's right. The new old bridge. That's right. Okay. And if you went, there it is, you can see it's going to Ann Street. Now that thing in the front is the old trestle. There was a train trestle there. One of my favorite memories, but I don't have a picture of it, was when the train fell off the trestle. It did. What happened was they were going to launch some kind of a boat that was on a train car. Yep.
Look at Duke on Piper's Lane.
Well, actually, that's the fisheries. That's
No, I know, the south end.
Duke on down, it's kind of Spartan back there.
Right.
But they swung this boat out on a crane that was mounted on a train car, and they put the boom too far down. And when they swung the boat out, the train car and the train, the whole thing went over. The only thing that was left floating was the boat. Yeah, it was a mess. Yeah. Huh?
Did they get the train up?
Yeah, I guess they did. I don't know how they did it, but yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's the train trestle. Of course, that's gone. I think the train finally petered out in the 90s. I think I'm right. Maybe the late 80s. Okay, switch please. And that's going to Moorhead. So you come down off of the bridge. There's only one road, a double lane road, going to Moorhead City off in the distance. And there is, another bridge. Going to Moorhead City used to be an all-day trip. Now, I'm telling you. You had a drawbridge on the Beaufort side, and you had a drawbridge on the Moorhead side, and you could catch 4 bridges. go to Moorhead and pick up a light bulb and come back, but you would have to sit for the Moorhead Bridge twice and the Beaufort Bridge twice. That could happen.
Now in the summer with tourists.
Yeah, right. Yep, and you see the bridge going over to Piver's Island up in the left. Yep. Now the Graydon Paul Bridge was concrete, but the Piver's Island Bridge was wooden, and it was only one lane. You could if somebody was coming the other direction, one of you had to back up. Yep. Okay. All right. Switch. And as far as as far as I'm concerned, that was the only reason to go across the bridge. That was the Rex. That was the Rex restaurant. It was an Italian restaurant, and it was delicious, especially for a child that only got fish and potatoes and stuff. Okay.
So, do you remember about where that was in Moorhead?
I do.
Tell me, like, what's there now?
I think the building still might be there. It's not. Yeah, is it?
Oh, the big square medical.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say it's right. It's right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Switch, please. Oop, went too far. Now Beaufort had a smell. I wish that y'all could smell it.
We remember it.
Okay. Beaufort had a smell in the fall. That would, I never thought that Menhaden smell was terribly bad. It smelled like fish cooking to me. But that was the smell. Steve, that's across Gallant's Channel over. That's Harvey Smith's, yeah. So if the wind went to the northeast, that plant there would stink us. If the wind went to the southeast, the one down at the end of Beaufort, the Beaufort Fisheries would stink us. And so we lived in, of course, to me, it didn't stink. I mean, but a lot of people thought so. Bridget thought so. She used to tell everybody I was musty.
My daddy called me the smell of money.
Yeah. But Beaufort also had a summer smell. And at least where I lived, down on Orange Street, it smelled like Otis Purefoy's haul out, where a fellow by the name of Charlie Glover would paint the boats, and he would cut up juniper wood to go on the boats. He was Otis Purefoy's handyman. He would repair all of Otis's wooden charter boats there right across the street from Mary Ellen's house. And I would go there and bum pieces of juniper from him and carve duck decoys with it. Yep. Also, the garbage on the front street in those days, you can see the Lala G coming into port there. The garbage was a little bit more odoriferous in those days than it is now. And then, of course, there was the marsh smell, which always was sort of the background to everything.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Jeff,
But there was also one other smell. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
last picture, a gentleman standing with a rudder,
Yeah.
that's my Uncle Einar.
Yeah, I've been darned.
Einar Wilson.
Yeah.
He immigrated from Norway.
Yeah, that's part of the black fisherman crowd.
Yep, that's exactly, the Beaufort.
Mm-hmm.
Beaufort Norway, named the boat was.
Now, Tom's uncle was not black. I didn't mean to say that. What the, okay, yep. That picture that he's talking about there, you see how the boat actually has a sharp stern and a sharp bow? There was a group of Scandinavian fishermen that came here back in the 20s and 30s, and they were fishing for what we now call a black sea bass. But they just called them blackfish, and so did my parents. They called them blackfish. And we called them here collectively the black fishermen. And people think they were black, but they weren't. They were Scandinavian. Iverson is a name that came with them, right? Stevenson was a name that came with them, and they intermarried here, and so that's where those names both
He
came.
was my grandfather's brother. My grandfather had, name of his boat was Alice.
Okay, switch back if you would, please. Now, who remembers this smell? Okay, that is the Fry Roofing Company. They made shingles. They made shingles out of cloth and tar and whatever that particulate is that they put on the top. But they made shingles, and I guarantee you when the wind went to the southwest, Beaufort's, down where I lived, at that end of town, smelled like fry roofing. But it was an acrid chemical smell, but you sort of got used to it. And
Where was this located?
it was over there. It's now between the old hotel where the Jefferson was and the port terminal. I think the port probably bought their land. I think it's probably part of the port now.
That probably was an unhealthy smell.
Yeah, but we smelled it because we also chased the mosquito truck. That was DDT. So yeah, damn good thing I'm not a bird. Now let me tell you about this stuff here. The Fry Roofing Company made shingles. Fry Roofing made shingles, and they would trim the shingles, and you could go over there and get bags of the trimmings. The trimmings from Fry Roofing Company have a half-life longer than uranium. When I decided I needed a picture of some, I went out into my backyard and dug down, and sure enough, my father had put some there back in the early 60s. I grabbed a handful of them, washed them off in the garden hose, and took this picture. They look the same. Yeah.
Yeah, they paint a lot of driveways.
Why did it last so long?
They made out of tar, the same thing that, they were dead dinosaurs, and right. But you paved your driveways with them.
Yeah.
That driveways. My father had a shed in the backyard. This was before the historical commission, but he had a shed in the backyard, and he didn't have a floor, but he wanted to keep the lawnmower there. So he dumped 3 or 4 bags of those things there. They're still there, about 12 inches below the ground. Yeah. Switch, please. And we didn't have much trouble with crime in Beaufort. Okay. Now that's the police station that we were talking about. Now y'all are thinking, sure, Jeff, that there was another big police station somewhere, and this was an outpost. No, this was the police station. This was it. The police station. And that's right. Look, even then, the Fourth Amendment required you to give the defendant a call if he wanted to call a lawyer, but he had to have a dime because he had to go outside and call on the payphone, and nobody would answer anyhow. The police car that we had when it ran was parked in that parking spot right there in the front, and sometimes it didn't run. So, okay, switch. And at night, Beaufort closed down. Yeah, this was like 8:30 at night. My father used to say that you could put a cannon on the turntable and shoot it down Front Street, and it wouldn't hit a damn thing until it hit Captain Pepper's Fish House when it turned. That's right. And he was right. Yep, that's.
Speech, and I had to give in class, and it was, I live in this small town where you can get parking after 6 o'clock and nobody even knows.
That's right. Okay, switch please. All right, now this is something some of you probably knew something about, but let me tell other people about it. In 1958, the Great Front Street Fire. My first memory of it was I was 3 years old, and remember I lived above the funeral home then at 125 Craven Street, which was about as far from here to the street down there from House's drugstore. Okay, switch please. There was Joe House's drugstore under a building called the Potter Building. That's the corner of Front Street and Craven Street. Craven Street goes long ways out into the distance. Front Street crosses in front of you, and you're sitting on Tom Potter's fuel dock right there, looking at the building. Now that Hendricks and Maxwell were Dr. Hendricks and Dr. Maxwell, who were the first occupants of that building. The one on the left, Dr. Hendricks, was a dentist. Dr. Maxwell was a general practitioner. Okay. It probably was, but this was when, see, Dr. Maxwell actually, he and Mr. Potter built that building together to be a hospital and doctor's offices. So that's the reason why his name's on it. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. That's right. On the left, over to the left. That's right. A lot of elderly people, well, not elderly, but not young people, were born there. Okay, there you go. Exactly.
So this was
Right.
the hospital?
The hospital was to the left of it, but yeah, it was upstairs. It only had 9 beds, but it was a life-saving thing, let me tell you. Now downstairs was Mr. Joe House's drugstore. Mr. Joe House had come here and started a pharmacy way back around the turn of the century, and he'd moved several places. But he had a house. I don't know if he's in it right then, because this is actually 1939. Steve gave me this picture the other day. It's 1939, and until then, the post office was there. Now, in 1939, the new post office building down at the corner of Pollock Street was built, and they moved. And then shortly thereafter, Joe House's drugstore came. So I don't know if he's in there yet or not, but that's where he was.
In about the summer of 1949 or 50, I worked at the soda factory in House's drugstore.
Okay, so that was there, wasn't it?
I remember that. My sister worked there in 1901, late 50s. Okay.
Late 50s?
Before it burned down.
Yeah, 58 was when it burned down. Okay, so on a cold winter December day in 1958, we all went to bed. I was a child living literally just about where that tree is. Early in the morning, like 2 o'clock, my mother was shaking me awake. I remember that. And the bedroom was glowing this eerie orange color. And I was confused, and Mom said, "Get up, gather your favorite toys, a few of them, and we got to leave." And I didn't know where my father was. Turned out he was down here helping to fight the fire. But Mom was saying that we had to leave because the house was going to catch on fire. So we did that. We went next door to my grandmother's house. But you know, thank goodness the wind was blowing from the direction that, it was actually from the northwest. And it blew the fire over and burned down some buildings on Front Street, but it did not. And it didn't even get Sally Thomas's house. Now, Sally Thomas's house is now an art studio over on the historic grounds. I can't remember what the name of it is, but you can see Maddie King, that's right. But you can see the front of it right there before it got moved, and it didn't even burn.
Where?
Right behind the Potter Building. You can. That is now the Maddie King Art Center, but that was before it moved. Okay. Now. It didn't burn down our house, but it did burn down 9. You can switch, please. 9 buildings. Now I always thought that was an odd headline. Yeah, I mean, if it had been a Morehead City fire, the damn newspaper would have said, "Disaster is upon us, apocalypse here." Yeah. But because it was a Beaufort fire, the newspaper said, "Blaze cleans out 9 buildings." Like it was something that had been needing to be done for a while. It was his daddy. Lockwood's daddy was the editor then. Okay, switch, please. Now here's the sad part. One of the firemen was a beloved fellow, Jewel Duncan's son, Jewel Duncan. Judge Jewel Duncan was a favorite character in Beaufort back in those days. And that's his son, who was a volunteer fireman. He was an avid volunteer fireman. One of those that, loved to be up at the fire station and everything. Anyhow, Jewel Duncan lived where the Wootons live now, down at the turntable in Beaufort, in that beautiful house. Well, that was his house, and that he inherited, his wife Sarah's house. So they finally got the fire under control about 5 o'clock in the morning. And Jewel said, "I've been feeling kind of tired. I'm going to go home and go to bed, guys." And they said, "All right, Captain Jewel, we got it. We're okay." And so he trudged down the street. Now, it was a cold December day. The wind was blowing hard out of the northwest still, miserable cold. And so he made it as far as the front steps of his house and collapsed on the front steps and died of a heart attack. And his wife, Sarah, got up about 9 o'clock and found him laying out there. So that was the one fatality. Nobody else died in it. So, okay?
Maybe like smoke inhalation that wasn't.
Probably. Okay. That's it. Okay. Well, you can see it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
They YouTube it. Okay. Here's another story that only the locals know. Several years later, after the 1958 fire, my cousins and I were playing in the backyard one September evening. We were playing tag, my older cousins, Julius Jr. and William Ivy. And the oddest thing, it was a beautiful sunset in the west, and it kept getting darker like it usually does, darker and darker that time of day. And then all of a sudden, it started, the sunset, well, it's like it was in reverse. And it started getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Well, we stopped playing and looked at that, and that's the oddest doggone thing. And it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and then all of a sudden there was an explosion that literally shook Beaufort like an earthquake. It broke windows in Beaufort. It scared everybody to death. I remember my cousins and I were just standing there transfixed, looking at this, looked like an atomic bomb going up into the western atmosphere. And of course my mother ran down off the porch and grabbed me like a damn osprey grabbing a mullet, and brought me back into the house. But what it was the USN, it should be USNS, Potomac, that it had exploded in September of '61. Switch, please. This is the Potomac.
They unloaded fuel on radio.
That's right. That's right. That's the Potomac. I looked high and long for that and finally found a picture of her before she exploded. That's not at Morehead City, that's somewhere else. But she was a T3, I think is what it was, tanker, which was she was only 10 years old when this happened. She was a modern tanker, in the U.S. Navy, not a U.S. warship, but a fleet oiler, they called them. And she had come to unload at the dock there on Radio Island next to the very large aviation fuel storage tanks. And that's what she was unloading, was aviation fuel. And, switch please. In those days, Radio Island is to the left. That's Morehead City and the port off in the distance. But the bridge going to Morehead City was as we've talked about, a low bridge that had a draw in the middle of it. You can see it down there. What's on the right there is the new bridge being built. The one that's there now, the high-rise, that's the new high-rise that was being built in those days, but wasn't open. So there was some guys from, I want to say they were from Rocky Mount or maybe one of the little communities around there that had come down to go fishing. Their favorite thing was to go up underneath the bridge there, tie to a piling. They had their Coleman lantern and all, and they were going to drink a little bit of beer and do a little fishing that night and catch, triggerfish or sheephead or whatever. And they got there, and all of a sudden they started being overwhelmed with the smell of petroleum. And what had happened was a C-suction valve on the Potomac had been left open or had failed and was open, but it was spewing aviation gasoline and petroleum, JP5, and there was a rising tide, so it was bringing it right up the river, under the bridge, and around those guys fishing. It was so bad that they said that they had to leave. Their eyes were watering, it was so bad. And so they started up their little motor on their boat and cast off from the bridge, and something happened, we don't know for sure what, but there are stories that their Coleman lantern turned over in the boat. Some people say it was a bridge, the wiring under the bridge sparked. So the bottom line is about the time they were leaving, fire ignited around them and then swept downstream following the spill, and then surrounded the tanker. Half of the crew was ashore, thank God. They were eating and looking and watching movies or whatever. I mean, they were on leave, inshore. The other half was kind of getting ready to go eat something or what have you. But then the fire came around the tanker, and the hatches and the tanks forward had been left open, and they exploded almost immediately. Okay, switch please.
What happened to the fishermen?
They all lived, but they lost their boat. But one of them actually climbed up the dang pilings onto the roadway of the bridge. And the other ones, because the tide was rising, they could swim. They weren't being swept out, they were being swept in. So now that's the Cholula. That's the Coast Guard cutter Cholula pumping water on the tanker after that explosion. That's the first. But there was another group of people on a boat called the Bunny 2. The Bunny TOO. It was named after the guy's wife, a fellow by the name of Arthur Lewis was the captain of her. And he had named her, it was the second boat he had, he named after his wife that everybody called Bunny. When they saw that explosion, the first explosion, he was out in the bulkhead channel, and he turned right towards the tanker because immediately he started seeing men gathering on a fantail jumping off into the water, into the fire. And he steamed right ahead and actually held the boat there while his crew was able to get every one of those men, all except for one, who they never saw him again, but all of those men into the Bunny 2 and then across the creek, across Bulkhead Channel into where there was an ambulance. Turn, please. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I have looked and looked and looked, is the crew of the Bunny 2. That was taken after this fire because they got all kinds of national heroism awards. Yeah, and so that was the 4 guys. The one in the checkered shirt who's kind of smiling the biggest, that's Captain Arthur Lewis. He was the captain of her. And the rest of them just happened to be on the boat that day. They were coming back from a fishing trip or maybe just going to the dock or something. But they ended up saving most of the men on that tanker that got saved. Okay, switch please. The tanker burned and burned and burned. The reason why I included that photograph is because it shows how close it was to millions, literally millions of gallons of petroleum. In the background, you can see Beaufort. But Atlantic Beach and Moorhead it was sat right, that whole disaster happened right in the middle of the distance between Beaufort, Moorhead, and Atlantic Beach. So it would have been a monumental disaster if those tanks had ruptured and had exploded. There'd been no way in the world. Fire departments, as it was, fire departments came from all over North Carolina, came from Cherry Point, came from Camp Lejeune, and they finally, after days and days and days, got the fire out. But they basically let it burn out more than anything else. When the fire departments got here that night, they were directed to pump water onto those tanks. If you look closely, you can see water is being pumped on them still when this photograph was taken. And that's how they saved the tanks. They cooled them by pumping water onto the tanks. The firemen didn't worry about it, they just let it burn out. But they were able to save those tanks and save the towns, because if they had ruptured, there was literally 1 million gallons of petroleum there. Okay, 61, September of 61. Now, we watched the fire until it was time to go to bed from the Sinclair dock downtown. I remember that everybody in town was on the docks. Everybody in Beaufort was down on the docks. There was all kinds of rumors that were going around. We heard, for instance, that we were at nuclear war, that what had happened, that a missile had been shot at Cherry Point and missed and hit Moorhead City. That was one story we heard. We also heard that as soon as the tide changed, the tide was going to wash it up Gallant's Channel and burn Beaufort down. We heard that too. All kinds of, you know how rumors are, and there was no cell phone to know really what was going on. My father and my uncle ran an ambulance business that was in conjunction with the funeral home, which I've always wondered about too. But anyhow, so some bitch ain't dead yet. Here, hit him again. But no.
A lot of people didn't survive that.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, they left because they thought that they had to. So bottom line is, though, it was probably the most horrific fire in Carteret County's history. It was. And another thing I remember, the horn on that tanker blew for days, and it sounded so mournful, because what happened was the fire was still burning and forming steam that blew the horn. It was a steam whistle. And I remember my mom said it sounded like a wounded animal dying over there. And it did. It really did. Okay, switch the channel.
He said he would be that vividly, but he would stand and they told him the bed and they couldn't keep their eyes off of it all night long.
Yeah.
He was on the 3rd floor.
Yep. That's another much better picture of it. That's with it. That is pointed over towards what is now Atlantic Beach. But the center of the tanker just blew up, as you can see. Now, later on, they salvaged the stern of her, and she's part of a boat that I think is still in existence, named the Shenandoah. Yep. Sure did. Okay, switch, please. Yep. Okay, that's the pilot house There's the pilot house. One of the guys was actually standing on it. He just vaporized. And there was 3 people that died, and he was the first to go. So. Okay, switch, please. Hurricane season, when I was a kid, we had 3 big ones here. Connie and Hazel was a year before me. Connie was the year I was born, and then Donna was in 60. I remember that one the most. Okay, switch, please. That's Miss Sally Poole Thomas. Remember me telling you where her house was? She lived, what is the Maddie what now? What's the name of it? Maddie King's house, right? Okay, she lived right there, and she was the sweetest lady. She actually was a seamstress down at the Bob and Sue, I think is what she did. Yep. Huh?
Is this Sally Poole's mother? Is this the,
That's Sally Poole Thomas.
is it her mother or we know?
That's the Sally Poole that was an old lady when I was 5 years old.
She had a daughter that they called Sally Poole.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit. That's right.
More from that.
Yeah, and I remember Troy.
Okay.
Troy's
And
that.
was Miss Sally's daughter.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So she's walking around in a hurricane.
She's walking around in a hurricane. Now, that has to be before 1958 because the Potter Building is still there. So that's probably Hazel, which was in 54. But it could be Diane or Ione, either one. But you look how far the water is up Craven Street there. And that's what she's so grumpy about, is because it's right there at her doorstep right now. And I don't blame her for being grumpy. In fact, you can see that she's been wading around in it because the hem of her dress is wet. But that's Miss Sally Poole. She, just like I said, just as sweet as she could be. But that day, she probably would have slapped you. But switch, please. And that's the same storm. That's standing at the corner of Front Street, looking down Front Street towards the west.
Must have been pretty close to the height of the storm right there.
Well, actually, they say the water came up to the tops of the parking meters.
I remember it halfway.
Up the stairs, we stayed on Front Street and I have down near Miss Duncan's house. And it came up the stair and we on the side.
Yep. Switch, please.
Did it officially come ashore? It came ashore south of
South of us, Calabash, I think. That's right. Now that storm there is Donna. And Donna actually hurt Carteret County worse than Hazel did.
That road that's caved in, my daddy worked for power company and he came down the road in the early middle of the night after I had gone by to see if we were still alive because we stayed over there and the road crumbled under his truck.
Yep. That is Highway 70 as it was in those days. It's now the road I guess it's the service road over on the causeway. And you can see the train tracks had been washed out. And you can see actually an old bulkhead from the days when the train went over a trestle all the way to Morehead City. Washed the
Water washed out
Yep.
6 feet under the road.
That's exactly right. Well, all of that causeway had been pumped up there. See, in the old days, the train went on a wooden trestle all the way across, and it was marsh all the way from Beaufort to Morehead, and vice versa. Switch, please. National Guard was called in. That's on Turner Street, right down the alley from where I was living on Craven Street. That's Vic's pool hall above the guy's head you see there. Yep, and it's now called the the Royal James, right? Yeah. There's the police station down there. That's the command post. Okay. All right, switch, please. And that's Vic. Yep, there's Vic Balama right there. He had pool tournaments, and he's handing somebody's won a trophy. Okay, switch, please. Had to make your own fun in Beaufort. Let's look at some of the things we did. We went to the ice plant on our bicycles, and you got a little sliver of ice from the ice plant. They would chowder up the ice box on the porch there, and there would always be slivers of ice left in the ice machine. And so they would give you, if you rode there and asked for it, they'd give you, and it was better than a Pepsi-Cola on a hot day like today. Just all it was ice, but it was free. And anything free is better than anything else. So, switch, please. We would make ice cream with the ice. We'd go to the ice plant and hand crank our own ice cream in the evenings. My Aunt Shirley had a peach ice cream recipe that could not be beat. My father was an engineer, and he always explained everything to me in the most important detail. And he explained that the ice plant ice is colder than normal ice. I did not know that. But the truth is, the ice plant froze its ice down to about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The ice in your refrigerator is only about 28, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So the ice in the ice plant made her better ice cream because it's colder. I thought ice was ice, but that's not true. Okay, switch please. We'd go to Clyde Owens's and we would get a hot dog or candy. And Clyde would ring us up and try to sell us a broom. Do you remember that? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Switch, please.
Is this the store on What Street?
It's not. It's gone.
It was on Broad Street.
It was on Broad Street. Yeah, it was gone. There is Math Owens. He had a cousin who also had a store. Math only had one thumb, I think. One thumb was gone, or maybe it was an index finger. But anyhow, Math, and I'd go there because I lived right at the other end of the alley, and I'd go there and buy like a penny's worth of candy, which was plenty in those days. But now then it was the Hampton Mariners Museum, and then the Maritime Museum, and now it's Crew Bar. Okay, switch please. We had Halloween parties. Who knows Craig Hamilton? Anybody know Craig? He's the clown to the left. The left, extreme left. That's Craig. Anybody know George Cottingham? You can recognize him, can't you? He's the guy in the sweater and the bow tie. David Cantrell has got the straw hat on. I don't know the other two. I don't know the kid in the orange coat or the other clown. And Bobby Booth, who is now Bobby Jones, is in extreme right. And there's another fellow there that's dressed in a red tie. That would be me. So, okay. So switch, please. We went down to Gloucester 3 times every summer. And on a Saturday night in June and in July and in August, and they would have chicken barbecues down there. The community would put it on, and they would grill the barbecue chicken in a grill, not a grill, but like in the ground, that kind of thing. And it was absolutely the best barbecue chicken that has ever been. They still have them now, but it's a different crowd doing it. Gloucester. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right there at the community building. I think that lady right there in the hat is Eloise Piggott, I believe. That's right. Yep. Well, I think that's her. Go look at her and you'll see.
This lady looks more like Eloise.
I know, but that picture was taken back in the 50s or maybe even 40s. Okay. Ma'am, I used to have dark hair too.
I did too.
Okay, switch please. And Elmer's Clam House used to have some hellacious parties. That was a party that was held for the Department of Conservation and Development in 1939 or 1940. But he had those. In fact, he used to sponsor the clam bakes for East Carteret High School. Y'all remember those? Yep. Switch, please. Had music that played. God, I would have loved to have been there for that. Okay, switch, please. And we had beauty contests. That one was over in Morehead City, but we had them in Beaufort too. And you always can tell a beauty contestant from Carteret County because she's willing to stand barefooted in 1/4 of an inch of fresh seagull poop in order to win the title. And smile about it. They happy to. Yes, sir, I'll go stand in that poop right there. Okay. All right, switch, please.
Dynam in that picture by any chance?
Do it.
Barbara Dynam.
I don't know.
Barbara Dynam Willis.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, we had a movie theater in downtown Beaufort. Well, we had the Sea Breeze, but the Sea Breeze was, it kind of petered out by World War II. But then they had another one in the 50s and 60s that was called the Beaufort Theater. And it's where the, what is the name of the general store is now. Okay, switch please. There it is. Yep, there it is, a kind of a fuzzy picture, but there it is on a summer day with its light still showing. We would go, kids around the neighborhood would go see the matinee all the time. We didn't give a darn what the picture was. We just wanted to be cool, because it was hot and we did not have air conditioning. But the theater did. Okay, switch. And we went swimming off of what we call the Federal Dock, which was right in front of the post office. Look how absent the bird show is. Carrot Island, look how it's not there. That's because Carrot Island was pumped up too. In those days, the bird show was a show. That's right. So, okay. Yep. Switch, please. And we would look back at Beaufort while we swam at the bird show. That might be Mary Ellen, I'm not sure. Yeah. Because that's Alan's boat in that engine there, I think. Yep. Or Jackie or David. Yep. Okay, switch please.
Wait,
Oh no, Mr. Wizard.
I can do this.
Hey, okay, yep. Then I just press you right there on the boat.
I'm trying to find the word.
Right there, you got it. Perfect. Ah, dog. Okay, there's Alan's boat that I showed you earlier on.
And that was a big deal back then.
Yes.
There weren't any boats.
No. And a nice boat was 16 feet long and had a 35 horsepower Johnson on it. Nowadays, it's got 300s on it. Exactly. I hear people complaining, you can't water ski in Kaler's Creek. No, you can't. You can't. Don't, because your boat, you don't need to be in that boat to begin with. Okay, switch. And we would put pennies on the train tracks. The train always went so slow you could walk along and talk to whoever was driving. I'm not kidding. I mean, it was, and it started dinging its bell, and you would hear it coming for an hour and a half. Okay, switch. There it is going across the trestle to Morehead City in 1979. Okay, switch please. And you all might not know this, but we had a drive-in theater in Beaufort. That is the East Drive-In Theater, and it's easy to know where it was, I should say. It's where the McDonald's is today. If you will switch. Yep. There in the bottom is an aerial view of the McDonald's. And in the top is an aerial view right after the theater closed. It didn't close, Hurricane Donna blew it down. And so there's the theater as it was. Of course, in those days out there where McDonald's, that was just country. That was out there. And so if you look there at the bottom picture, but look at the grassy field. You can still see the tracks because they had dumped dirt or shells or something for the cars, so the cars would point up towards the. Yep. So we had that. We had a theater that lasted several years before it, like I said, it was destroyed. Okay, switch. And you could go to Cape Lookout. There's plenty of land there in those days. Yep.
There's no erosion. How about that?
Yep. Switch, please. And you could go to Les and Sally's. That's their little place that they had there for years and years and years. And the next picture is Les and Sally. Now, they told me that they had cold beer there. In fact, they said that was the coldest beer in Carteret County. I'm not saying whether I knew or not, but that's what I've always heard, that was the best place to get beer. Of course, it was kind of high, but still. Okay, switch. And if you knew somebody with a beach buggy, you could go around the point at Cape Lookout and see the old World War II gun mounts, which were falling in the ocean even when I was a child. They're gone now. But they were constructed during World War II to protect the harbor at Cape Lookout from intrusion by submarines or whatever. Okay, switch please. And we fished right down Front Street. That's a big sheephead, but that little kid caught it right down that dock. Old Inlet End dock is where he caught it. Okay, switch please. And we flounder gigged at night over on the backside of the bird shoal. As many as you wanted. Didn't have to worry about the man coming and getting you. I understand that Coleman lantern fell overboard one time and caught a tanker on fire. But yeah, okay, switch please. That was a decent flounder. That would be good, baked up with some potatoes and onions. Okay. All right, switch please. And you might not know this, but we had a golf course in Beaufort. Down at the very end of Front Street, next to what is now the boat lift crowd, there was a 18-hole golf course. You all remember where Brian Lofton had his junkyard? That was the golf course. You can see it right there. This is a 1939 photograph. Well,
There was a large building down on that end of Front Street.
there it is right there. It was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Depression.
Okay, when school burned in 1945, my seventh grade,
Mhm.
eighth grade went to that building.
Yep.
Until the new building, school building.
Right.
All over.
Yep.
Yes, scattered all over.
Okay, switch please. And we went to the Beach Pavilion. Okay. I don't know. I think a storm blew it away too, but I'm not sure. It's over here on Atlantic Beach. Well, you could have parties there and what have you, right? Are you tired?
You could dance.
Dance? No, that's a different place.
Oh, that's a different.
Okay, switch again. That's the place where you could dance. That's the Beach Pavilion, which was a bar where they had a guy named David Lee. David Lee would throw your butt out if you were underage. Don't ask me how I know. David Lee was so strong he could. David Lee was so strong. I've seen him do it. He could take a penny between his thumb and his forefinger and bend it in half. Yeah, I think so. No, Dave, that was a different David Lee. That was David. That was yeah. Strong as a beauty. Yeah. Okay, switch please. And our lives were scored with WMBL,
Yes.
the radio station that gave Radio Island its name. That's right. That's right. That's right. We're Beaufort and more link or meet or what?
Came there in the 40s, I think.
Yeah, because it came right after the island was built. Radio Island wasn't built until right before World War II. So.
And is that WMBL the one that moved to Beaufort?
No, Beaufort had that was WBMA and a fella named Ray Cummins owned it. That's right, Uncle Ray. That's right. And the thing about that station was they played some good music because, especially in later years, because high school students were there at night playing it. But the thing about it is you could see the light on the top of the tower further than you could pick up the radio station. I'm serious. I'm not joking. Yep. Now that was a stronger station, but okay, switch please. Now, how we can? This is when we really started making our own fun. The first pirate invasion. Yep. Miss Jean Kell, we're going to see her right now in just a second. There she goes. Yep. Piggy Potter, Miss Jean Kell, Dr. John Coslow, and Graydon Paul, Grayden, Graydon Paul, made up this idea that they were going to have Beaufort be a historical destination tourism. And people were going to come here not for a week or for a month, but for a day. And to get people here, we had an antique show. Miss Jean Kell got that together. And we had an old homes tour, which is still going on today. And we had a pirate invasion. Now, pirates never invaded Beaufort. Some Spanish people did. But anyhow, she wrote up the skit, and that 1960 was the first year of it. Okay, switch. The volunteer firemen. Beaufort's volunteer firemen volunteered to be the pirates. Now you understand that the reason why they were so darn good at it is a short professional trip between being a volunteer fireman and being a pirate. A very short professional trip. I can only think of one more profession that would have been better. And that would be lawyers. But anyhow, so that was the first 1960. On the right there is Lou Newman or Dickie Newman, I can't remember which. On the left, holding the gun at port, whatever you call that, with a pirate face on, was a fellow named Norwood Gaskell. Norwood Gaskell was also known as Sandspur. Okay, and there were some other ones there, Math Chapman and some others there, but they were darn good pirates. Okay, Piggy Potter gave them an old purse boat to use as a pirate boat. Switch, please. And that's actually the crowds that used to get drawn there.
All locals.
Yep, all locals. Yeah, this is yeah. Yeah, that's, I don't know when that was. My mother and father are in the foreground there, so I don't know. They were in the foreground. Yep. Switch, please. There's the boat that Piggy gave them. She was an old lapstrake purse boat, and I think they had to bail as hard as they had to row, but still, that's the pirates. They would come down Taylor's Creek from the west heading east, and the crowd would have already been gathered, and everybody Graydon Paul would be narrating. He'd say, "Here come the pirates. They're going to try to capture Beaufort, but they first got to get the fort out of the way." Well, Jackie Booth and David Booth and me and Paul Dameron and I don't know how many guys would have scoured the bird shoal in the weeks before for anything that would burn or explode. And so we piled it all into a great big pile and had a flag in the center of it. Now this is going to be weird, but this is the truth. We had guns too, not fake guns, not blanks. We had guns with real ammunition. And we would shoot them up in the air like we were fighting the pirates. And just as the pirates would come ashore, Jackie would throw a torch into that garbage pile that he had doused with fuel oil, and it would literally woof like that, and we'd be shooting furiously up in the air, and the pirates would come and stab us with their swords and everything, and then we'd die. And then the pirates get back on their boat and head across the creek to Beaufort. All right, so switch, please. There's the fort burning from the air. I mean, we literally, tires worked great. Old tires worked great. Yep. Okay, switch, please. That's another year, but fort burning. Then there would be a terrific fight between the pirates and the local people, and the pirates would defeat the local people and go for the fair maidens. Okay, switch, please. You're getting ahead of me now. Okay, and the fair maidens would be all dressed and ready to be ravaged, to be violated by the pirates. Look at the fair maiden. Bridget, go hone in on the pinch with your finger, and you can go bigger or smaller. Look at that fair maiden there. Yeah, she looks like she's about over this whole thing. I don't know who she is. Now, let me tell you a funny story. The pirates come and capture the fair maidens. But there was a friend of mine who had one of her cousins down from somewhere to see this thing who had never seen it. And she was a fair maiden, but she didn't know it. That was in the days when all the girls wore those flowing cotton muslin hippie dresses, and she had one of those on. And one of the pirates mistook her for being a fair maiden and swooped her up. Her screams were genuine screams. All right, switch, please. And they would take all the fair maidens to,
How old were you when this was
Oh, well, it started in 1960, but it went on for many years after that.
Through high school.
Yeah, I was a teenager when I was burning the fort and shooting the gun. Okay, that's the Alfonso. That's where the pirates would take the fair maidens, but just I guess to do their thing. But whatever. But whatever. Before that happened, just in time. Switch, please. Here comes the local militia, and the militia would have a firefight out there with their guns in front of the Alfonso and either kill or wound all the pirates and set the fair maidens free before they were violated. And switch, please.
Was it in August still back then?
Nope, it was always in June. That's right. And then the pirates would be put on a wagon and hauled off to the jail. And it really wasn't a bad little skit, to be honest with you. I mean, it's kind of, BR 549, but I mean, we had a good time doing it.
Long time too. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to sit down just a minute because my sciatic nerve is telling me that I've been standing up too long. All right. Can y'all still hear me? Good. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about school. Okay. There were actually several schools in the history of Beaufort, starting with the school in the upper left and then the next one down, which later became a county office building. Then there was the fire that Ms. Bridges just talked about that burned. That school, the next one's on the left. And then the Beaufort School, which is still there today, is on the right. And then the black school, which was called the Queen Street School, is on the bottom. And that one would burn down also. I attended two of those schools. I attended the school, Beaufort Graded School, was used to be just Beaufort School. When they moved everybody to East Carter, it became Beaufort Graded School, and I was at that school. And then in middle school, I went for 1 year to the black school before it burned the following year. Okay? That's the building that I first started as the first grade. I was in the second grade on the other side of that same building when the microphone intercom crackled on and Principal Gainey's somber voice told us that the president had been shot in Dallas. Yep. Switch, please. There was a mandatory flag raising at that school every morning. Not for the little children, but for the seniors and juniors and maybe sophomores, the upperclassmen. That flagpole is still there. Okay, switch, please. And everybody, if they didn't go to the lunchroom, went to the two little stores. There was three, actually. That's not Jesse's. That's Brady's, later Mrs. Murphy's. That's over on the western end of Mulberry Street. Western end. When I say western end, the western end directly across from the school, where the buses came. You know where the buses came to an old school? Where the buses yard. That's across that was that store. It was two people owned it. Brady owned it at first, and then later on it was Miss Murphy's. Now the next one, it will be dear to your heart too. I looked high and low for that picture. There's the old spot that was directly across on that little delta of land that's still there, but it was a lot bigger in those days because Live Oak Street was a 2-lane road. Okay. Now, there was a third one. You're right. Mr. Fulcher, Jesse Fulcher. I think we called him Jesse Futching. You all remember that? Jesse Futching. He was Jesse Fulcher, who had a store in between the two. Yeah. But I don't have a picture of it. Okay, that was actually later on. That was in the 70s. East Carter High School. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was I don't know. I don't see any decorations up. Yeah, it's probably homecoming. Yeah, probably so. That was an earlier one. Now, I bet you all know some people there. I don't, but they're classes ahead of me. Now, by the way, I can stop anytime you all want me to. Okay. All right. I got more to show you. There's the drugstore. That's the Guthrie Jones drugstore. I know that that's a homecoming. That's a homecoming in the 50s. Mm-hmm. Okay, switch, please. All right. Other than Karen Amspacher, I also had a crush on that lady to the left there, she was Cheryl Temple. Still is Cheryl Temple. Well, she's still Cheryl Temple Young now. And I knew Ann Thick, but I didn't know her well. But that's Ann Thick to the right.
Sisters by fault because Cheryl's mother got killed in an accident, and Bill and Cheryl moved in with Ann and her.
I'll be darned.
Just saw Ann last week.
I'll be darned. Yep. Okay, switch please. Yep. And the crabbing season was always the first thing in the spring. Setting pots out. Okay, switch. And then you would get your peelers and put them in a cage, and so that they would peel, and then you would have soft crabs. That was in June or so. And at Easter, you would go to Mr. Rumley's, Mr. Jim Rumley's, and you would buy little pink and orange and purple biddies, and they would all grow into mean white roosters. I don't know how he knew, but he did. Okay. And in the summer, it would be time to go shrimping, even though shrimping wasn't a huge thing when my dad was a young kid. It had grown by the time I was a kid. And so the shrimpers would be out shrimping at night and would lay up during the day. Okay, switch. She's got her nose planted in the swell there in Pamlico Sound. I don't know what boat that is, but yep. And that was a decent catch there for at least one haul. Yep. And then you had your scallop season. That was later in the summer. But, you know, a lot of people don't remember the scallops because they fished it out and tore up the beds, too, at the same time. And that's what can happen. But that was a big industry when I was in high school and younger, was the scallop industry.
Was that base scallops or large?
Yes, they were. In fact, there was a lot of them that was literally in waist-deep water. I remember going over to Harker's Island from Beaufort. You'd leave Taylor's Creek and head towards over at Harker's Island. Right in front of Harker's Island would be great big patches of what we call eelgrass. And it would be about waist deep. You could bail out of the boat there and walk around on the eelgrass, and the water was so clear, it looked like the Bahamas there. And you could reach down and catch scallops and take your pocket knife out and open them and eat them raw. They were delicious. Just as sweet as sugar. Yep. Go ahead. That's another boat. That's one of Richard Davis's boats, I think. Yep. Loaded right down. The next season was in the fall, mullet season. And they would launch boats over at Salter Path right into the surf. And they still do it, yep. And catch mullets with what they call a stop net. And those guys you can see the net piled up in the back of that boat. They're launching it with a tractor right into the surf. Okay, switch. And then they'd haul the mullet ashore. Now, that was an earlier picture, but doing the same thing. That's actually, that is near Bear Inlet. That's further down the beach south. Yep. Who remembers Acock Brown? He was the editor of the Beaufort News for years.
One of his sons, Brantley Brown, was a classmate of mine about the 3rd grade.
That is Brantley Brown you're looking at.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Brantley went on to become an airline pilot, and he died not long ago. But that is Brantley Brown. You know, Acock Brown's name was Acock Brantley Brown, and so he was named after his father a little bit. But that's at Salter Path, probably in the early 40s, late 30s, something like that. And that's right. But he would always carry Brantley. Had another child, Charlie, named after Charlie Hassel. Huh? Hassel, I think. Hassell. The one who was bought the newspaper. The one who was the line typesetter at the newspaper. He saved up enough money.
My daddy was named Charles Hassel, and that's what I thought you said.
Okay, no,
We didn't know who
no.
he was.
Okay, well, just to tell you another story, the editor of the newspaper was Acock Brown, but the line guy who set the linotype machine or whatever was this fellow I'm talking about. It was Hassell, Hassell, I think. he saved up enough money without telling anybody during the Depression that when the newspaper almost went bankrupt during the Depression, he bought the newspaper and became the boss. And he saved it from extinction and ultimately sold it to what later became the Carteret County News-Times. Okay.
And
Yes,
Pop Brown went north to Dare County
yes,
and was very instrumental in bringing Dare County to where it is now.
absolutely. He went up there, took a job with the government doing assessments of damage from World War II when the torpedo boats were, or, the torpedoes were sinking all the tankers and everything up there. But he stayed.
And was very
Yep.
into publicity.
Absolutely. Yep. And also came back down here and was the publicist for the sanitary restaurant. Yep. Now, mullet, you can eat them any way. They have made Carteret Countyans survive forever. My favorite way is to put them on the grill with barbecue sauce. That is absolutely a good Corsound mullet. Don't mess with those from Pamlico. They taste like tree bark. Corsound mullet grilled with butter and barbecue sauce is absolutely delicious. That was part of my upbringing too. And that's the mullet roe that we would dry and salt. Actually salt it and dry it. And then you could eat it. It was delicious. You could scramble it in eggs if you didn't dry it out with too much salt. Or you could just bake it in the oven and eat it. Yep. It is. Well, that's something different. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, switch. It looks great and tastes wonderful on your charcuterie board. We had no idea when I was coming up what a charcuterie board might be. Switch, please. We did know what boards were. We knew what plain old pine boards were, or juniper boards, and that's how we dried our mullet. My father dried a many a one, salted it, cured it with salt, and then would put it out. The bugs would be crawling on it. My mother would be holding her nose, but he would come in and put one of those mullet in the oven and eat it. It was delicious.
So how long would this take to dry?
Weeks, days.
In the, just left it out in the sun?
No, on the back porch.
Back porch?
Yep. I carried, when I was in college, guys, when I was in college, I carried one of those dried baked mullets to school with me. And I was sitting there in my dorm room eating it. And one of my suite mates, who was from off somewhere, came in and looked at it and said, "Fudge!" And I didn't say a word. And he reached down and broke off a piece of it and popped it in his mouth and took 2 chews of it. And it looked like somebody had hit him in the face with an oar. All right, switch, please. Now that Menhaden season, I'm going to go fast through because you all know what this is. Okay, switch, please. In the fall, the Menhaden boats would arrive. The old steamers in those days, when this picture was taken, were made of wood. By the time I came along, they were World War II surplus corvettes and destroyer escorts and such, minesweepers and what have you. Okay, switch. They each purse boat steamer, and even though they were powered by diesels, they still called them steamers. Each steamer had 2 purse boats that went with it. Half of the purse net was in each purse boat. And you can see this one here, those 2 boats are tied together because you can't have the purse boats in your davits when you're ashore tied up next to each other because they would bang into each other. So you put the purse boats in the water when you had the boats, the steamers at the dock. Half the net is in each purse boat. You can see it going across the back of the boats there. Okay, switch. Now, you would go offshore with your steamer and your purse boats in their davits until you found a school of fish, either because you were up on the crow's nest and saw them, or later your spotter plane saw them, saw the school, and radioed down to you where the school was. That's Hall Waters. Do you remember Hall, Steve?
Yeah.
Hall Waters. That's Hall Waters' plane. He was out of Southport, but he was up and down the coast. And he would land his plane on the beach to save fuel while they were making a set. Okay, switch. They're making a set. One purse boat's going around the school on one side, one's going on the other side. The net is stretched in between them.
Oh,
Okay?
That's an awesome photo.
Yep. That is a school of fish. That's a school of they would call them bunkers, but they're up north, but we call them shad here. Okay. Switch. And eventually they would encircle the school of fish, drop a tom weight in the center that drew the purse together at the bottom. Now you've captured the entire school of fish and whatever's with them, sharks, whatever else. And you keep hardening the ball, they call it. You keep tightening the net, tightening it until you get the purse boats together, and the side of the steamer is the third part of the triangle there, and you've got a ball of fish right there between them. And, you know, to tighten the net in the old days, the guys would pull together, and so that they could all pull at the same time, they would chant usually some sort of gospel tune, and they could pull together at the same. Later on, they had deck winches in the purse boats that did the work for them. Okay, switch.
So then how would they lift?
Patience, my dear.
The Manhattan Shandyman became rather famous
Right.
at Carnegie Hall.
That's right, yep. In the earlier days, maybe switch again. I might have another picture. I might have taken it out. No, that's the picture. They would bail the fish from the ball of fish into the steamer with something that looked like a great big crab net. But it was much bigger and obviously too heavy for a man to handle, so they had it on a winch. But he still had a handle, and he would bail the fish in. Later on, they started pumping them in. They would pump the fish and the water into the bottom of the steamer, and then there were bilge pumps that was pumping the water back out on the other side of the steamer. Okay, switch. But they would load. That's mine and Steve's favorite shad boat picture. That is the Bernice Cree coming into Beaufort, right there back of what is now Finn's. She has got so many fish on board her that her deck is right level with the water. The crew knows that the deck is right there with the water. They're all on top of the engine house because they're worried that the boat will sink out from underneath them. But they're all on top of the engine house. Yep, they made some money that day. Okay, go ahead and switch. When I was a child, there were 3 factories operating. One was over on the other side of Gallant's Channel. That was Harvey Smith's fish meal company. There was Standard Products, which is the other one that's down on the bottom. And then the one that we all went to was Beaufort Fisheries. Okay, that's on the top. That's now where a very highfalutin restaurant and hotel is. And they would dry their nets because their nets were almost always made of something organic in those days, either hemp or cotton. And if you didn't dry the nets out, they would rot very quickly. Okay, switch.
And they did keep a wheelhouse in front of the hotel.
Yeah, drying wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and they would use machinery. In the old days, they did it by hand out on something called a drying deck. But then later on, they got cookers and such, and machinery to press the oil and to cook the meal. Go ahead, switch. That's the fish meal that they had to keep turning it over and over and over again because it had so much oil in it that if you left it alone, it would build up too much heat in the center of it and ignite itself. So you had to keep turning it over and over and over. That is great for fertilizer and I don't know, all kinds of products. I mean, the one thing you don't do with the menhaden is you don't eat it, except the fish roe. Everything else, you use it for making paint, making cosmetics, lipstick, yep, lots of cat food, right, dog food, mule food. Oh, yep, switch, please. The fish oil and what we call the stick, S-T-I-C-K oil, went into vats like that. Now, stick oil was what you smelled because it was rotten guts of fish and everything, scales and everything else. It was the water that was pumped out of the bottom of the tanks when the fish came in. But then the fish oil was also pressed out, and that was something that was high dollar product for that. So.
Where was the stick water disposed of?
Well, they used it to make stuff too. I don't even know what they made out of, but it's something fertilizer, I think. Now, that Scott Taylor took that photograph, and that to me is one of the best photographs because that reminds me of my child when Beaufort Fisheries was in full bloom. They would start blowing the whistle when the boats would come in, letting everybody in town know that they needed help unloading the boats. And you could make some money by going down there and simply being a crewman, even if you weren't employed up to that point.
and cookers would be going, and it'd be cold outside, and that steam would be blowing off from the cookers. And I'll tell you, it was a definitely an acquired smell, taste, but it was delicious. That's right. I think that might be the Greg Poole unloading there. Yep. Switch, please. And while boats were, because you understand, these guys would fish until they were either loaded or they had to come in. And so everybody would be hitting the docks at the same time. So while they were laying to the dock waiting to be unloaded, they'd have decks awash with fish. And so the boys from town would go down there and wade into those fish to break roe, which is what my friend down here on my left has already told me. Okay, so those guys were breaking roe. We did the same thing, except we were wearing blue jeans and tennis shoes.
What was it the parking that came through Beaufort and it too loaded and sank?
Yep, Parkin sank, and
Both all the crew.
we lost a bunch of the crew, not everybody, but most of them. Didn't die in the sinking, died when they all got on the purse boats and tried to make it into the town, and the Coast Guard was towing one of them, and it capsized and drowned everybody. The other one just capsized on its own volition and drowned everybody. So they made it out of the wreck, but died in the purse boats. Okay, switch. That's what a shad looks like when you break the roe out of it. You break the shad in half. They scream real loud, Bridget. They've been dead for hours. And so you break the fish in half and stick your 2 fingers in the body cavity and pull the roe out. Yeah, you have that. No, you don't mix them up with chewing gum. That's just to show the size. The roe would either be white or red. Red roe was a mature roe, and it was delicious. White roe, you would throw that back in because it didn't taste as good. Yep. Shad roe, absolutely. And let me show you what shad roe looks like when it's getting ready to be eaten. Now, that young lady right there was Aycock Brown's favorite model. You remember N.W. Taylor, the lawyer? That was his first cousin. Her name was Catherine O'Brien. And she was a beautiful woman, beautiful, elegant Beaufort woman. But she's showing you a pan of shad roe that's been broken and getting ready to be eaten.
I've seen this one right here and her brother stab each other with forks, trying to get
The last fish roe.
piece off the platter.
God knows it is good. It is absolutely good. Delicious. All right, switch. And that's what it looks like on a nice presentation of it looks like that. Now, that would last a Carteret County in 2 bites. But that's fried shad roe.
On grits
And bacon. Collards and bacon. Yes, ma'am. Shad roe on grits, collards, and bacon. It is a wonderful presentation. And would pop, God almighty, it would pop from here to Cape Lookout. Yep. Everything in the kitchen would be greasy. All right, a little bit of a somber note. Of course, all that came at a cost. I think that's the Charlie Edwards aground. They got her off. They didn't have any deaths on that. So, but the South Plan, when you go in across the Core Creek Bridge, heading towards Havelock, and you get to the top of it, look to your left, and that's where the South Plan had a collision with a barge coming in the other direction in 1939. It was at night. Everybody on the South Land was in the forepeak asleep where the crew slept, and most of them drowned. Terrible, terrible. Okay, switch. The parking, we just heard about that. The parking was coming in. It was during World War II. They were rushing to get back before curfew. There was a curfew, and boats couldn't be offshore at night because we couldn't tell them between them and a U-boat. And so they were rushing to get back in. A nor'easter came up, hit them right in the face. The purse boat on the far davit started swinging back and forth. Normally you cinch your purse boats up against the side of the steamer so they don't swing. That one was swinging. The davit kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Eventually broke through the hull and the boat started sinking. But all not lost. They realized it was sinking. There were other boats out there trying to take a load off of her to lighten her up. The crowd on the parking got into the 2 purse boats and left to get away from the wreck, but eventually, and I've told you about this, one just turned over in its own accord, drowned the people in it. The other one, the Coast Guard was trying to tow it back in, and it, you know, when you're towing a boat, you just can't tow a boat because they'll start washing back and forth, and it rolled over and drowned a lot. The people who lived made it to Shackelford Banks, and it was cold that night, and they got up on Shackelford Banks and were able to run around and save themselves, keeping hypothermia away from them. But most of the crew, including the captain, died. The captain was a Davis man who grew up on Davis Island and Davis Ridge, black man, who was the grandson of Sutton Davis, who you may remember my talk about, the Palmer Davis and Davis Ridge. Well, he was a descendant from them, but he drowned in that wreck. Okay? That's a Charlie Mason. We just saw her a second ago. Okay, this is one I definitely remember, Amagansett. Only had one death. That was a nor'easter. She was coming back fully loaded from what we call the east side, and had a load of fish, and ran right face and eyes into a nor'easter and rolled over and sank. The one guy that died was trying to cut the purse boats apart. You know, they had a net between them. He was on the back trying to cut the boats apart, and he drowned. And the Fenwick Island, she lost about half her crew. She, same thing, coming back with a load of fish, started listing. She was taking on water because apparently some of the deck hatches were off. She started taking on water and listing. Some of the crew got scared and bailed out, jumped overboard. They were lost. The other ones stayed on board. She, sure enough, stopped. When she stopped, she rolled over on her side but stayed afloat. And there was another captain coming up back of them that was able to rescue all of those people. So, all right. Finally, on a happier note, Christmas in Beaufort.
Oh.
Yep. That was an old Christmas card that I found. Yep. Switch, please. We had a Beaufort Christmas parade, and we had Beaufort decorations. They see the Christmas trees on the light posts and everything. I think that's 1975. That's the year after I left. They made me leave high school, so I did. So, but that's 75 years later. That's my mom, and our scraggly old Christmas tree from Jim Rumley's, probably.
And the nice tinsel all
Yeah,
individual.
that's right. And we ate oysters by the bushels. They were like, I don't know, $15 a bushel, $16 maybe a bushel.
What are they now?
95, I think, is what I think that's what I got quoted the other day. Well, switch. Yeah, that's an oyster roast at my house. Well, Santa Claus used to come on a boat before me. Remember I told you about the federal dock down in front of the post office? He would come to the federal dock, and all the school kids would be out and meet Santa Claus on the Coast Guard boat. Later, when I was a kid, switch please, he'd come on the fire truck during the Christmas parade and throw candy to everybody. Yep.
Did you ever know Santa Claus?
Yes, I did. Tommy Willis was Santa Claus most of the time when I was a little boy. He worked for my grandfather at the funeral home. He was a great big guy. Always had a happy demeanor, always laughing and everything. Died early because of his weight. Yeah. That's the Beaufort, one of the Beaufort buses all tied up for holidays. Here's another scraggly Jim Rumley Christmas tree. That is hardcore 1956
Yeah, that's what
at 121 Craven Street. Yeah. Later on, that little pony there developed a crack in his saddle, and every time I would sit in it, it pinched my hiney. And so he had to get thrown away. Okay. That's Aycock Brown's other son that I was telling you about, not Brantley, but the other one. Okay, switch. And this is the last thing because I consider this to be the end of Old Beaufort. It's when the old Beaufort docks, the gritty old Beaufort that we all knew, where everybody knew each other, where everybody knew your father and your pet and everybody else, where we all went to school together, where we all went to church together, where everybody knew each other. became something else. Now, I was in college when this happened. I took this picture myself, and I remember using it. You know, I can make up a story in a heartbeat, but I told my friends that there was a little-known battle of World War II. It was the Battle of Beaufort, and not many people knew about it. But U-boats shelled Beaufort during World War II, and that was what was left of Front Street. But really what that was urban renewal. They bought all the buildings on the south side of Front Street except Claude Wheatley's law office, and they demolished them and built a boardwalk.
Who gave the town the money for all
It
this?
was a federal government grant. Yep.
And somebody
right.
thought that was a good idea.
Well, it probably turned out to be a good idea. And so there's what was left. And of course, that was a couple of years later after the Dock House and the Beaufort restaurant were built down there for them. That's right. I took that picture from on top of, the Whitman building was gone by then. So it was probably on top of Jim Wheatley's store or somewhere. Switch.
This must have been right when the project was completed.
Yeah, in the 80s,
Looking
sometime
at the
probably.
cars and
Yeah,
stuff.
late 80s, something like that. There's another. I've never understood where that picture came from because we didn't have drones in those days, and that is way below traffic altitude. Yeah, I think it's a crow's nest of a shad boat, probably. But you can see what it looked like after urban renewal. Okay. Okay, switch please. And we're at the end of the story.
Your puppy, nice.
Yep, that's me in front of 112 Orange Street. All right, hope you all enjoyed it. I don't know how.